Hi.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name's Kyle Faubert.
Terry Woolsey here.
And we are My Census Consensus.
That's right.
Now today our episode is going to be talking about government overreach, right? Something that affects us all, and not just here in Alberta. It affects us everywhere in the world, in fact.
That's correct. So we're going to be talking about whether or not we have the right structure in our governments, or we've been corrupted, or we're being ripped off, or we need to do something about it. So first we're going to talk about the structure of government, particularly the way it's set up in Canada, and why we have a movement called the independence movement going on with all kinds of minority factions. I was going to say fractions, right? Factor or whatever. But all kinds of different people and groups getting involved in a similar movement that's uniting to go forward to make it better for people in Alberta and, I believe, for the people of Canada. So let's go get into the structure of government, how it's set up. So if you go back in history, and I like to connect history and facts together, and it usually points us to a conclusion, which gives us the ability to sort out the truth. And so let's begin with Canada. Like, Canada wasn't born under a revolution. Canada was born because of a desire of the people to govern themselves, and it's a slow process. And so, as we know, there was two Canadas at one time, Upper and Lower Canada. Upper Canada was actually in Ontario, and Lower Canada was in Quebec. And those are the two that started. And it went all the way back to the 1600s when they first came in. The French came in, and then the English came in, and then everybody else came in. And the Americans came in. In 1600s, there was a land deal done by the French. They had a tract of land outside what was called the 13 colonies in the U.S. And in the north above that was, I don't think it was even called Canada then. I think it was just a British colony. In any case, by the 1700s, the U.S. government, 1776, was a Constitution of the United States was made. Declaration of Independence was made, which is an interesting thing, Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Right? And they did that because of taxation. They didn't like being governed by the Crown in England. And so they separated by a Declaration of Independence and were eventually recognized by France as the first one to recognize them as independent and gave them credibility. So there's a path there we're talking about that you can see. In any case, as time went on, the 13 colonies took over the east coast of the United States, and they had a civil war and all that stuff happened, and the Loyalists went up into Canada. And then they had a bunch of skirmishes and whatever that went on. And eventually they sold, the French decided they would sell to the United States what was called the frontier at that time, which was just the land east of the East Coast, which weren't provinces at that time, but they were areas. And they sold it to the United States government, and then the United States was called the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
And that Louisiana Purchase, interestingly enough, how it affects Canada, is that went right up into southern Saskatchewan and up into southern Alberta, where we're at today. We were part of the Louisiana Purchase. We didn't have any say in it because there was kings made the decision back then, and the governments. And then King Charles II sold a huge tract of land to the Hudson Bay Company, and it was called Rupert's Land. And we live in that area, and Rupert's Land went down into the United States, opposite of what the Louisiana Purchase did. And so when they created the 49th parallel, when they created Canada in 1867, they drew a line through it and it cut all those lands off, and the Louisiana Purchase stayed south of the border and the Ruperts went north of the border of the 49th parallel. And of course, we can argue about the 49th parallel because it doesn't fall all the way through, but we won't worry about that. In any case, that's the history of that. And then when they set up Upper Canada and Lower Canada, they used the Westminster system of government that came out of England. And they decided that they'd set up a House of Commons and a Senate, and then a judicial system. And they gave to, by the time Canada was formed, before 1905, Ontario got 24 votes in the Senate, and Quebec got 24. And the Maritimes got 24, and Newfoundland and Labrador got 6. And so that was the form of it. And then when they brought Alberta into it, each one of those provinces that came into Canada were given a certain number of votes in the Senate, and it was all instituted by negotiation with each of the provinces. But when Alberta and Saskatchewan came in, they were one area called Buffalo, and Sifton didn't think that, I think it was Sifton didn't think that was a good idea right at the time that they were going to bring them in, and so they didn't consult with Alberta because it was just a territory out there in the boonies, and they liked the beaver pelts. You know, they weren't growing a lot of grain or doing anything big, but they knew that there was a lot of resources in the West, and they wanted the West to be able to feed the East's industries and build it up and make it prosperous.
Yeah, who was it that actually said that?
Sifton is one that said that particular, yeah. And so they did that. So they gave each of the prairie provinces 6 Senate seats, and the Northwest Territories 3. And that's how we came up with 101 or whatever the number is right now. And so the reason that was set up ideally was that when the House of Commons, the people that were elected to the House of Commons, passed a law, the Senate could review it, and if they thought that wasn't the best thing for Canada, they could send it back to them and have it negotiate a better deal maybe, right? Unfortunately, over time, Eastern Canada always retained, no matter how much the population shifted, always retained the majority of those votes. And even today, that hasn't changed. It's still the same, and we're 120 years, almost 25 years into the process, and it hasn't changed. There's been a few changes that made, but it's very slow and not very fair for the have provinces and the have not provinces.
When's the last time we had a balanced budget?
Yeah, well, 1955 in Alberta with John Diefenbaker, he had a surplus budget. So
he was the last one?
Yeah, he was the last one, yeah. And then after that, Liberals got control and it went to hell in a handbasket.
So, you know, who do the Liberals answer to, would you think? You know,
this is one of the other problems that we had with setting up the government, is the fact that if you look at the U.S. government when it was set up, we tried to mirror the Westminster system in Britain and the American system. The American system had no parties. The Westminster system did have Tories and what was the other name? I can't remember. Tories and the Whigs. Yeah, that's it. So now they're conservatives and liberals, right?
Yeah.
And the Tories are liberals and the Whigs are, no, the other way around. The Whigs are liberals and the Tories are conservatives, I believe. In any case, then what happened was the system that was set up with those party system was, if you supported, if you're more conservative, you would vote for a conservative type of government. But the conservative was a party. It was no longer an individual. And then the parties would set up in their own system, which we have today, they would set up constituencies, and those constituencies would be controlled by the party, not by the people, or with the people within the party in theory. But it's gone south on us. Big time, because now the parties dictate the policy, they dictate the legislation, and really the people don't get to hash it out and vote for the best people they want, because they always, like the U.S. system, you're going to vote for the president, right? Or in Canada, you're going to vote for, you think that's the best premier. And it really doesn't matter so much the guy. They're going to be given authority because you vote that guy in your area, gives that guy the authority to dictate to you what goes on in your life.
It's just crazy to me. I don't like our system at all. I think we should be voting on the person, because the person is who ends up running it. You know, you look at Carney, right? All of our brothers and sisters in the UK were warning us, don't let him in, he destroyed things here. And then instead, you got all these people on the east coast of Canada, and I know there's a lot in BC too. Okay, don't worry, I ain't forgetting about you, right? But they elbows up, so mad about the tariffs. Anyone with common sense would have said, hey, why don't we drop all of our tariffs on the U.S. so they can't put a tariff on us too? But they don't want to do that, because Carney makes money off inflation. You can look into this. This is what they all are making money off of, right? So when we get back into the governments, right, and who's controlling this?
Right.
You know, it's not the people of Canada aren't controlling the government anymore.
Yeah, so
right?
let's go back to the basics again. The House of Commons. So we know that the Senate is controlled out of the East, but they're not elected. They're appointed. They're appointed by whoever is the Prime Minister of Canada. They're not appointed by anybody else. House of Commons is another one. So the House of Commons, the same structure exists, 232 seats in the East and 111 in the West. Is there any chance that if we wanted to change those numbers around and make them more representative, that we could do that without the approval of the East? And the answer is obviously no. And so the system's rigged for Canada. It's a one-sided ledger. It only has the East telling the West what they want to do, and even if we say this is what we want to do, they just don't give it to us.
You know, you reminded me of that interview Trudeau did before he became in office, and he said, this is Quebec's country. Look at all the prime ministers, and you can find it on YouTube, and he lists all these prime ministers are from Quebec, and he's saying, so then when you're telling me the seat count, right, Ontario should have more seats and Quebec should have less, but I mean, Ontario people should be upset about that too, right? So this is an issue for everybody.
Yeah, and it goes beyond that. So you can't win in the House of Commons, you can't win in the Senate, because the party drives the agenda, not the people. And so if the party are corrupt, let's say we're all familiar with the World Economic Forum. They're not elected either. United Nations, they're not elected. You know, One World Government people belong to both those organizations. They bring their people in, they create the agenda, and we get to live by it. So it's not fair. And then you challenge it, you go into the judicial system and you look back in history. All the judges are appointed by the federal government. So if you want a new judge, it's the Prime Minister that suggests who that's going to be at the end of the day.
Isn't it crazy?
And so it's all fixed, right? So it's rigged. The whole system's rigged. And what say do you actually have? So if you look at the elections, to overemphasize it, if I may, is the election's over before it crosses the Manitoba border. Every time. Every time. Just look at the history of it. So how do you fix that now? We know it's wrong. We know it's rigged. We have to, under the Constitution of Canada, you have to have 7 out of 10 provinces agree and 50% of the population.
We're not going to be able to fix it. The only way is Alberta independence. Everyone's got to fix it in-house. You know what I mean? We got to clean our own houses and fix. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear what you think on that. But, you know, after going over the Epstein files, learning about the Trilateral Commission, Epstein's picked up at 30 some odd years old or early 30s, just 30, whatever. And he gets a list of every business owner in Asia, every business owner in North America, every business owner in Europe, a write-up on them, their families, things that they're interested in, so he can meet with all of them, because they know the world leaders change every 4 years on average, right, in most places. So how are we going to make a new world order if we don't do it? So what's happened, back in the day, there used to be secret societies like the High IQ Society that would keep people like Carney and Trudeau in line, right? And you can look back in this, and this was part of our history. Well, at some point, all of these organizations join these, trilateral commissions or whatever, and they're infiltrating everybody and basically controlling everyone. So Carney is just a business guy put in place. He's not actually here for the people at all. His family lives in New York. He was in the UK. They kicked him out of there. I mean, all the people don't want him there. I mean, I guess the king will let him back in, right?
That's how they created the one world government.
Yeah. That's exactly
and they even infiltrated the religions with it.
And you can tell these people don't read the Old Testament, because that's what we're reading right now. And if you read the Old Testament, you want to talk about sending a negative chill down your spine, watch at what's happening in the world and compare it to the Old Testament, how they're trying to make one religion, taking all the beautiful cultures that God made and moving the people around, right? We don't need God. We'll just build a tower to heaven. And I mean, it's honestly sickening what's happening. So there is only one way, and that's Alberta independence. And I feel everyone should want their independence, because you know what? What are we allowing these people to do, right? What did God give us that matters, right? Freedom. He gave us freedom over the air, the sky, right? The water, the land, right? But what's happening right now, they're doing geoengineering over all of us, spraying chemtrails, right? Amazon Prime has a beautiful documentary on this. It's real, and you can see it, but people are ignoring it, right? They're going to ignore it until somebody in their house is affected by cancer, and then they're going to care. We look at the water. They're putting fluoride in a lot of cities' waters. They're putting all kinds of things. We don't need this stuff in there, right? And why? Because the dentist will say, oh, it's good for your teeth. Well, it says on it that you don't give a fluoride to a baby, so then why are we putting it in the water where the parents are going to wash the baby? These are just simple things. And since 2022, right, I've been noticing a lot of increase in our foods. Negative stuff. Okay, so here's one. Maltodextrin, highly processed carb, rapid blood sugar spike, high glycemic. Animal studies suggest it may stress gut lining, promote bacterial overgrowth, inflammation, or worsen colitis in susceptible people. It's got low nutritional value. Look at how many things have maltodextrin. Okay, so there's a lot more I can talk about this type of stuff, but I'm moving on. Cellulose gum. Okay, similar to polysorbate, alters microbiome, linked in studies to inflammation, higher heart disease, diabetes risk in observational data, right?
So you're saying they don't care about you.
I'm saying that they have an agenda and they are going to do anything. This stuff shouldn't be in our food. Polysorbate 80, I know a lot about it because I had a kid who went through 4 months of chemotherapy treatment, and they're putting that in all the pickles. I can't find a jar of pickles in the grocery store that doesn't have polysorbate 80. Last year I could. This year I can't.
Pickles?
I like pickles on my hamburgers, hot dogs, yeah. Animal studies show it disrupts gut bacteria, increases intestinal permeability, leaky gut, promotes inflammation, metabolic issues, obesity, diabetes risk, potentially colorectal cancer promotion, human data emerging but concerning by heavy processed food consumers. So this, again, polysorbate 80, cellulose gum, maltodextrin, it has no place in our food system. It shouldn't be in there. Here's another one, carrageenan, right? It's a food grade grass, but animal studies link it to intestinal inflammation, thinner gut mucus barrier. So if you notice, it all does the same thing because God protected us with the liner, with the microbiome. We are made beautifully, right? And what's happening is they are trying to add little chemicals, little things to affect how God designed us, right? And they're trying to make it that we're just sick enough that we just need these pills, we need this, we need that. God gave us everything we need. That's what I know, right?
So you're telling me that the pharmaceuticals and the medical industry just want to keep you sick enough to keep you alive so that they can drain you of all your assets and your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want to keep
I got a question for you.
Chemically modified and synthetic,
Yeah. Chemically modified and synthetic. So what's green, hangs in a tree, and vibrates?
What's green and hangs in the tree and vibrates?
Electric pickle.
An election.
Anyway.
Who puts a pickle on the tree for Christmas? Is that Germans do that? They hide the pickle?
Yeah, that's right. Hide the
That's
pickle.
funny, yeah.
So, all of this is a consequence of the distortion of the power of the people. And it's a consequence of other people devising ways to take advantage of the public and to control them. And so what we want to do is, there's lots of other issues besides these that we can talk about, and we're going to do that. And we want your input on it. But we want also to be able to focus on how we're going to solve this problem, because it is a problem. If we don't solve the problem, the system is collapsing. It's not going to collapse, it is collapsing. And we have to solve it. We have to solve it in our home, we have to solve it in our community, we have to solve it in our province, we have to solve it in the country, and we have to solve it worldwide.
So what do you think the first steps are?
The solutions they're offering is totally pointed towards the elite. It's not pointed towards you and me. And we should all be elite, okay, and be equal.
All these new houses, $800,000.
That's right. Well, $28 million plane he had turned in the other day, right? Because he got caught. But there's no consequences. So we have to set up a government by the people, all right? And that's where independence comes in. It supports a concept that I won't say I entirely came up with by myself, but there are about 17 nations that run off of this system, and it's called direct democracy. And there's different variations of direct democracy, but we want to go to direct democracy, where you, the people, control the government. The government doesn't control you. So these issues that we come up with, which are all real issues and valid points, can only be solved if we have the right form of government. If we continue down the road we've got, I can guarantee that this whole thing is collapsing and will collapse.
It just gets worse and worse and worse.
It's going to be ugly if we don't fix it. And so people need to do something about it. And so that's why the independence movement in Alberta is gaining momentum, because people are recognizing that the government, the way that they're set up, is rigged in the elite's favor, not in the people's favor. So let me give you a real example of how that works. You elect a person through your party system, whoever that is. They go to Edmonton or Ottawa, and if they're the majority, then they get to write the legislation, and they get to create the legislation, and they get to pass the legislation, and then you have to live it no matter what they do. But that guy you elected has only got one little say about it, and he's not accountable to you any longer until the next election. That sounds to me like the fix is in.
Well, and I just watched a video, right, of our parliament, and there was a lady talking to this guy who Carney's got in charge, right, and saying, so you're just going to, get rid of 150 years of laws, so you guys can do whatever you want. And he's like, well, that's not what we're saying. But she's like, that is what you're saying. You're saying that a company can be exempted. An individual can be exempted from the law.
Right.
Well, how does this make any sense? And to me, there needs to be arrests, right? Trudeau should be arrested. Carney, you're part of it. You should be arrested too. If we commit fraud, we commit crimes, we have to go to jail. We have to do this. So when is the RCMP going to start doing their jobs? Because last time I checked,
they don't want to lose their job.
But don't they work for us?
Oh, well, when did you ever think that? Because that's a correction we have to make. They should be working for us. Not only should they be working for us, we should be in control of their work. That's the same thing with the government. So this whole thing of direct democracy filters right down through the entire system. If you're talking about control of food, it's us that should dictate what goes on there, not the government, not these special interests that are padding their pockets. I don't think Carney has one conflict of interest, right? 143 that we know of so far. So he does. and he should be thrown out of the government. If he had any honor, he would resign, but he's ruined every country he's ever gone into.
And his bank account keeps going up every time he does it. So
that's right.
I mean,
so
he works for the top people.
It has to be by the people. So how do you set that up by the people? You set it up under a democratic system where you vote for your best representative. And I don't care if he belongs to a party, he doesn't belong to a party. He has to be the best representative for you and represent you.
And one bad move, you're gone. There's no 3 strikes, you're out.
He's accountable to you, not to the party. And he wants to account to the party for what he's doing and try to influence you, and you find that out, he kick his butt out of office. And we have to have the rules to do that. And right now, most of the rules are too onerous to be able to accomplish that within a 4-year period. And then there's all kinds of things they can throw in your way. So that I think is the main thing we want to get across today, is that we have to change the system. If you don't change the system, it's going to collapse. Whether it's this year, next year, and it's moving really fast, by the way.
Is it ever moving fast?
Yeah, it's moving really fast. So as we come up to this referendum in Alberta, you Canadians, you want to save Canada, save Alberta first, because we're right up against the wall right now. By October 19th, as long as the Premier and the Prime Minister don't enact the Emergencies Act to try to stop it, which would be illegal under the Constitution, Section 92, that would be illegal for him to do that, but he's been known to do that illegally. So we have to stand up and be counted for. So
you're right. And you know, when my dad was dying of turbo cancer, one of the last things he said, right, is, we're all going to be in big trouble if we don't do something. And that's the thing. If we don't stand up for ourselves, who's going to do it?
Exactly. So we have to unite together. It doesn't matter what party you belong to, what your political affiliation is that we have to be able to get together and unite and get this Alberta an independent state. At that point, when that happens, it will have a mushroom effect. It will have a dominoes effect across the country, across the world. And so with that, till next time, we'll see you again.
Yeah, and if anyone would like to come on and talk about some of this stuff, let us know. Reach out, mycensusconsensus@gmail.com. Thank you all.
See you later.
Take care.